Carl Jung didn't see libido as just lust. He saw it as life force, the raw psychological energy that animates your choices, obsessions, dreams, and direction. He called it the psychic engine of the soul, not just the urge to merge, but the urge to become. Every drive you have toward art, toward achievement, toward transformation has roots in this primal current. And when it flows freely, your life builds structure. When it fragments, so do you. Jung warned us, if you don't know how to hold your energy, the world will spend it for you. And that's exactly what's happened. Open your phone. What do you see? Bodies, fantasies, triggers, algorithms calibrated to pull your libido outward, to scatter your attention, to keep you hungry for the next hit. Not just sexually, psychologically. It's not just your desire that's being manipulated, it's your direction. The average man today isn't ruled by purpose. He's ruled by stimulation. Scroll, swipe, repeat. What if your greatest power isn't who you attract, but what you no longer chase? In this video, we'll uncover why reclaiming your desire is the key to freedom, focus, and untouchable self-possession. Stay till the end, because the truth about modern masculinity isn't what you've been told. Every platform, every ad, every dopamine trap you fall into, it feeds on the same thing: unresolved psychic energy, desire with no discipline, fire with no focus, and when that energy leaks, so does your power. Jung believed that the modern man suffers not because he's too sexual, but because he's too divided. His inner forces are at war. His libido is scattered across screens, fantasies, and hollow compulsions. So he never builds, never embodies, never evolves. He becomes reactive, dependent, easily sold, easily swayed, a perfect consumer. Because a man distracted by desire is a man who can't challenge systems. He won't question culture. He won't ask, what is this hunger costing me? And yet, beneath all that noise, something ancient remains. The same force that creates obsession can create legacy. The same energy hijacked by impulse can be transmuted into genius, but only if it is brought back home, reclaimed, reintegrated. This isn't about shame, it's about sovereignty. Your libido isn't the enemy, it's the key. The question is, are you using it to escape yourself or to find yourself? Jung's message was never moral, it was existential. Until a man masters his energy, he will be ruled by everything that seeks to steal it. Reclaiming it isn't just healing, it's rebellion. Carl Jung didn't just study the mind, he mapped its gods. Deep within every man lives a constellation of archetypes, ancient psychological patterns that shape our thoughts, emotions, and actions. And when a man reclaims his sexuality, not by indulging it endlessly, but by transcending it, these archetypes don't die. They awaken. The lover, once intoxicated by fantasy, sobers into depth. No longer hunting illusions, he becomes a vessel for intimacy without dependency. He feels deeply, but no longer loses himself in the feeling. He seduces not with desperation, but with presence. This lover is dangerous because he doesn't crave approval, he radiates wholeness. The warrior returns next, no longer scattered by lust or digital temptation. His sword is sharp, his gaze singular. He doesn't rage blindly, he defends with intention. His battles are chosen, not reactionary. And his strength, unlike the insecure bravado of a man enslaved by appetite, is silent, steady, relentless. Then from the shadows the magician emerges. Not the trickster who manipulates, but the true alchemist. He's learned to transmute sexual energy into vision, creativity, discipline. His mind is still, yet alive. He sees connections others miss. He speaks less, but every word casts a spell. Libido, once wasted in fantasy, now fuels insight. And quietly within all this, walks the sage, detached but not numb. He has made peace with paradox. He knows that power lies not in control, but in alignment. His wisdom isn't borrowed, it's earned through silence, solitude, and sacrifice. He has faced his shadow and lived to tell the story. This is the inner kingdom of the desexualized man. He is not hollow. He is not passive. He is not above it all. He is simply integrated. His energy no longer leaks into fantasy, addiction, or people-pleasing. It concentrates, it deepens, it sharpens. This is what Jung meant by psychic alchemy, the transformation of base instinct into inner gold. Not the rejection of nature, but the refinement of it. In today's world, men are bombarded with symbols of instant reward, validation disguised as affection, lust disguised as power. We are taught to chase endlessly, and then punished when the chase leads to emptiness. But this man no longer chases. He cultivates. He doesn't shrink his desire. He expands his capacity to hold it without collapse. He is no longer a puppet of his biology. He is a master of it, not by denial, but by initiation. The archetypes were never meant to be conquered. They were meant to be awakened. And now that they are, the man who walks with his lover, warrior, magician, and sage, he doesn't just live, he leads. There was a time when desire pointed you towards something sacred. Now it drags you into something synthetic. Look around. Everything is selling sex, but not in the way you think. It's not about intimacy. It's not even about pleasure. It's about control. We live in a world where attention is currency, and nothing hijacks attention faster than the promise of seduction. The algorithm knows this. The marketers know this. The machines that run your feed don't care about your soul. They care about your response rate. Scroll, click, react. The same primal circuitry once used for survival now drives a digital economy, and the target is you. Carl Jung said the unconscious is ruled by symbols, powerful images that bypass logic and speak directly to the soul. In ancient times, these were mythic: gods, goddesses, serpents, temples. Today, they wear yoga pants, bikini filters, simulated intimacy in 4K resolution. We've traded sacred archetypes for curated thirst traps. And in that exchange, something went silent inside the modern man: his imagination. When you're fed fantasy at every turn, your inner world begins to decay. Desire becomes outsourced. You no longer generate meaning, you consume it. This isn't accidental, it's structural. You weren't taught to master your desire. You were taught to monetize it. Your lust is profitable. Your loneliness is scalable. Your distraction is a product. And every time you chase the next image, the next high, the next validation, you fragment, little by little, click by click, until you forget what it meant to be whole. The desexualized mind isn't void of feeling. It isn't robotic. It isn't cold. It is disciplined. It is immune to symbols designed to enslave the psyche, immune to illusions that feed on emptiness. The man who withdraws his energy from fantasy doesn't become numb, he becomes potent, because that energy has to go somewhere. And when it's no longer spent on illusion, it fuels insight, it builds purpose, it becomes power. This is why every system built to sell you something needs you weak. They need you to chase, to crave, to need. But here's the paradox. The moment you stop chasing, they lose their grip. You begin to see how false it all is. The influencers, the aesthetics, the digital desire, all of it, bait. The desexualized mind sees through the veil, not because it's blind to beauty, but because it's no longer hostage to it. You don't need to become celibate to be powerful. You just need to become sovereign, to choose what you give your energy to know when you are being seduced and why. Jung didn't warn against sexuality. He warned against unconsciousness, because a man who doesn't know what he serves will serve whatever feeds him. Desexualization is not denial. It's not about turning away from your nature. It's about turning inward, into it. You've been taught that to transcend desire, you must suppress it, hide it, cut it out like a disease. But that's not mastery. That's fear dressed as virtue. Carl Jung warned that what you repress doesn't disappear. It festers, it grows. In the dark corners of the psyche, it mutates. He called it the shadow, the rejected self. The parts of you that society condemns, religion demonizes, and media exploits. Especially your sexuality. Most men aren't fighting desire. They're fighting their guilt about desire. But guilt doesn't purify. It poisons. It twists healthy instinct into compulsive behavior. It turns passion into addiction, affection into obsession, romance into manipulation. True power begins not when you avoid the fire, but when you learn to hold it without being burned. To look directly at what tempts you, what calls you, what threatens to control you, and remain centered. This is not suppression, it's transmutation. It's the difference between the boy who runs from lust and the man who alchemizes it into focus. The immature celibate hides behind restraint, hoping to silence the beast. The integrated man stands beside it, aware, awake, and unafraid. He doesn't fantasize about purity, he embraces paradox. He knows that to be whole, he must hold both fire and form, impulse and intent. This work is not clean, it's not romantic, it's uncomfortable, it's lonely, it's brutal, but it's real. Because only when you face the parts of yourself you fear most, do you stop being their slave. You stop chasing fantasies for relief. You stop collapsing under urges. You stop defining your worth by who finds you desirable. You become the kind of man who doesn't fear seduction because he's already seduced his own shadow, not to destroy it, to understand it. This is the work of inner sovereignty. The world doesn't want men like this. They're too unpredictable, too independent, too awake. But Jung knew, the man who integrates his darkness doesn't become less human. He becomes unshakable. He becomes free. You were told to tame your desire by pretending it doesn't exist, to conquer lust by silencing it, to become noble by amputating your instincts. But suppression is not strength. It's fear disguised as discipline. And fear is never mastery, it's avoidance. Carl Jung didn't see the unconscious as something to repress. He saw it as a mirror reflecting the parts of yourself you were too civilized, too conditioned, or too ashamed to admit were still alive. Sexual energy is not dirty, it's not dangerous. It's directionless power until you give it form. When men hear desexualization, they think it means castration, weakness, emptiness, a numb retreat from desire. But real desexualization isn't the absence of energy, it's the redirection of it. The unintegrated man chases validation through bodies. He scrolls, he fantasizes, he consumes. Not because he's free, but because he's enslaved by hunger he doesn't understand. He calls it pleasure, but it's anesthesia. Then comes the moment of reckoning, the point where you no longer want escape. You want command. Not over others, over yourself. You begin to see that lust isn't something to be feared or worshipped. It's something to be studied, held, transformed. You don't kill the fire, you contain it. You forge it into attention, focus, will. This is shadow work, to feel the pull and not collapse, to recognize the craving and not obey, to stare into the mirror of your instincts and say, I see you. You are mine now. The immature celibate pretends he's above desire. The integrated man walks beside it, neither ruled by it nor ashamed of it. This isn't purity, it's presence. It's the weight of your full self returned to you, not sterilized but sharpened. In a world that profits off your inability to say no, the man who can look at temptation and smile, not because he's cold, but because he's whole, that man is dangerous, not to others, to the system. Because the moment you stop leaking energy to shadows you won't name, you become what you were meant to be all along. Not someone who runs from desire, but someone who owns it. Someone no longer possessed by impulse, but possessed by purpose. He isn't empty. He isn't repressed. He isn't weak. The desexualized man is simply initiated, not by society, not by applause, but by fire, internal fire. Jung didn't see men as machines of logic. He saw them as mythologies, each carrying ancient energies waiting to be remembered. The lover, the warrior, the magician, the sage. These are not fantasies. They are fragments of your psyche. And when your lust is no longer spilled unconsciously, something rare begins to happen. They awaken. The lover isn't destroyed, he evolves. He is no longer a slave to pleasure or praise. His longing becomes more refined, less about the body, more about beauty itself. He listens deeply, loves deeply, but he does not dissolve an emotion. He can walk away, and that makes his presence powerful. The warrior? He stops chasing approval. No longer fractured by distraction, he sharpens into precision. His focus is sacred. His actions are deliberate. He isn't looking to conquer others, only himself. Discipline becomes his devotion, not to suppress his impulses, but to master them. Then comes the magician, the one who alchemizes pain into insight. When his libido is no longer scattered through screens and fantasy, it becomes mental clarity. Ideas flood in. Vision emerges. He learns to see what others can't, because he's no longer chasing what everyone wants. And deep in the silence, the sage watches, waits, speaks only when the words are true. He has no need to prove, because he knows that the world isn't broken, only misaligned. Knows that energy, once rechanneled, becomes wisdom. This is what psychic alchemy looks like. You take the base instincts, the hunger, the lust, the loneliness, and you refine them into purpose, into presence, into power. Men today are told to unleash their desire endlessly, swipe, scroll, consume, and when they do, they feel emptier. Not because desire is wrong, but because it was never meant to be used like this. You weren't built to chase endlessly. You were built to create, to hold your energy, to transform it. High-performing men across history weren't superhuman. They were simply concentrated. Leonardo, Tesla, Jung himself, they weren't distracted. They had tapped into their archetypes, not by pretending not to feel desire, but by transmuting it. The desexualized mind is not numb. It's focused, it's potent, it's anchored. It doesn't seek stimulation, it generates magnetism. It doesn't react, it directs. You can feel the shift when you stop craving, when you stop running, when you stop needing something outside of you to feel whole. That's when the archetypes come alive, not as fantasies, but as forces. You don't lose your desire, you channel it. And the man who channels it, he no longer just survives this world, he bends it. Why is it that when a man says no to lust, the world laughs? Not with him. At him. He's mocked, called repressed, a joke. In movies, he's the awkward loner. In media, he's the cult member. Online, he's the incel, the failure, the threat. But what if the joke has always been on us? Modern culture doesn't mock celibacy because it's weak. It mocks it because it's dangerous. Not to society's well-being, to its economy. A man who isn't ruled by sexual craving becomes less predictable, less reactive, less easy to sell to. He doesn't click on the ad, he doesn't buy the fantasy, he doesn't chase the algorithm's bait, because his attention isn't for sale, his energy isn't scattered, his choices aren't hijacked by desire. Carl Jung warned of this, that when you remain unconscious of your instincts, you don't control them. They control you. They shape your choices in ways you think are your own. You think you're scrolling for fun. You're actually being trained. You think you're choosing who to chase. You're responding to cues you didn't design, because distraction is profitable, addiction is scalable, and men who are addicted to lust are the perfect consumers. So when a man says, "I will not chase," he becomes unpredictable. His energy returns inward, and in that moment, he becomes less of a product and more of a person. Discipline then is no longer about punishment. It's about sovereignty. It's the quiet rebellion in a world screaming for your submission, not through violence, through stillness, through the ability to see your desire and not obey it. That's power, not because it dominates others, but because it finally belongs to you. In the end, freedom is not the ability to do what you want. It's the strength to choose what not to do. And nothing reveals your freedom more than how you handle your desire when no one is watching. Why is celibacy the punchline? Why is the man who says no to lust called a monk a loser, a fraud, it's not because he's dangerous to others. It's because he's dangerous to systems that depend on him being distracted. In a world engineered for overstimulation, the man who no longer chases is a glitch in the matrix. He doesn't buy the product. He doesn't click the thirst trap. He doesn't need the illusion. Modern culture has turned lust into a currency, not love. Lust, short-term, disposable, infinitely renewable. Every swipe, every scroll, every stare into a glowing screen is training the male psyche to want what it cannot hold, to crave what gives no nourishment. Because an aroused man is an obedient one, not to truth, but to temptation, to algorithmy, to advertising, to every external voice telling him who to be, what to want, and how to prove himself. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." So long as you don't understand your impulses, they will be used against you. Freedom isn't rebellion, it's discipline. It's not the absence of desire, it's the ability to contain it, to stare into the fire and choose not to burn. The desexualized man is not neutered, he is refined. He has stopped outsourcing his power to approval. He has reclaimed his attention, not because he has none to give, but because he knows its worth. This is why he's dangerous, because he can say no, because he sees through the mask, because he's not waiting to be validated. He's watching, still, focused. If this awakens something in you, share your thoughts below and let others feel the fire too. Subscribe for more cinematic truths that challenge the world and rebuild the self.